Before I get started with this story, let me give a shout out to Yonina Yisrael on Twitter for tagging me in this post. And I'm only going to assume they tagged me in this post because they know that I live in the state of Maryland. And this is about something that's coming out of the state of Maryland. If y'all don't know who this is the Maryland State Governor, Larry Hogan. And what he has recently done, if you only look at the surface of it, it looks like a great thing. But if you really go into the details of it, it's not so much that it's not a great thing, but it's also like a WTF type of thing at the same time. So basically what has happened is Larry Hogan has granted posthumously, which basically means after death, pardons for 34 black lynchings that happened in the state of Maryland. But the thing is, you're granting pardons to 34 black victims who were lynched, but they were victims. Like, how does one grant a pardon to victims? Usually I could have sworn a pardon was given to a person who committed a crime and they were locked up and you give them a pardon. I thought that's how pardons worked, unless they have changed over the years or in recent years. But to give a pardon to the victims, that made no sense. And a lot of people called Larry Hogan out on that, and to the people that congratulated him on doing something great, I'm gonna need y'all to go back and read the article if you haven't read it already. Read past the headline and like really dissect what just happened. Like, you just gave pardons to victims, and these were lynching victims, meaning these were black people lynched probably back during the Jim Crow era. Shoot, the way things going on right now, they could have been recent. But I'm gonna go ahead and read this article coming from the Washington Post. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan on Saturday granted posthumously, and I swear I think sometimes I be messing up that word, and I probably am, pardons for 34 black victims of lynchings in the state. A sweeping action, he said, would be a step forward, rectifying the killings of youth and men who were denied due process. Hogan announced the pardons on a rainy morning in Towson, standing feet away from a building that was once a jail. There, nearly 136 years ago, 75 men, their faces concealed with masks, pulled 15-year-old Howard Cooper from his cell and hanged him from a nearby sycamore tree. Historians say Cooper, who had been accused of rape and was scheduled to be executed, was lynched before his attorneys could appeal his case to the U.S. Supreme Court. At a ceremony to memorialize Cooper on Saturday, Hogan decried how the teenager's life was taken so violently and so senselessly by an angry mob unwilling to give him the due process he was entitled to. Hogan declared he would posthumously pardon Cooper as well as 33 other victims of lynching in the state between 1854 and 1933. You're talking like damn near 100 years of lynchings that happened in the state of Maryland. Now, I will say that, you know how they bury our history. I didn't even know that this even existed. And I lived in this state all my life. But, you know, they hide a lot of our history from us, so that there's that. He read each of the victims' names aloud before signing the pardons, ending his list with a 13-year-old boy named Frederick, whose full name the governor said was lost to history. The boy was hanged from a tree in or near Cecilton, a small city about 35 miles southwest of Wilmington, Delaware, around September 1861. Studying Cooper's case led me to dig deeper and to seek out details in all the documented cases, Hogan said. My hope is that this action will at least in some way help to right these horrific wrongs and perhaps bring a measure of peace to the memories of these individuals and their descendants. You know, there is one thing that could be done about this, but they're not going to do it. One, this could be a major case for reparations, number one, for the descendants of these individuals. Number two, this could actually help, if they were to do it and actually speed up the process, an anti-black discrimination bill, sort of like they have now for the Asian American community. But I know they're not going to do that because they've been having this stuff on the table, collecting dust for God knows how long. And, you know, they keep saying that that is nothing that they can do, or they just don't care. And like I said, you got people like Tim Scott and Clown Mala and creepy Mr. Touchy Jim Crow Joe Biden talking about America is not a racist nation. They didn't even say the PC version of it, of saying that America is not racist anymore. They just said it's never been a racist country. or establishment. But you have this be unearthed just a few days ago. Like I said, if you was to really dig deep into America's history, it's amazing what you would find. It'll blow your mind. Like this right here that I'm reading, I did not know about this. I did not know about it. Several states have offered posthumous pardons to individuals who were falsely accused of a crime and then lynched, dating back at least as far as Georgia's decision in 1986 to pardon Leo Frank, a Jewish man wrongly convicted of killing a child and then lynched in 1915 in a famous case of Southern anti-Semitism. But Hogan, a Republican who is barred by state law from seeking a third term in 2022 and is exploring future political options, is the first to make a systematic pardon of all known lynching victims in any state. The Equal Justice Initiative's Lynching in America project has documented more than 4,000 lynchings across the South from 1877 to 1950, as well as dozens of them in other states, including Maryland. Did you hear that? More than 4,000 lynchings across the South between 1877 and 1950. That's 27 years away from a century worth of lynchings that have happened in America on a consistent basis. 4,000. And some were in the state of Maryland. And they said that was just across the South. We not even counting the ones that happened in the North. Don't think for a second that none of them happened in the North. Flanked by state leaders and racial justice advocates, Hogan said his actions were partially inspired by a petition from middle school students at nearby Loch Raven Technical Academy in Towson, calling on him to consider the posthumous pardon for Cooper. The petition was sent to Hogan earlier this year by the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, which has sought to document the historical extrajudicial hangings throughout the state and has identified at least 40 lynchings in Maryland. Michael Ricci, a spokesperson for Hogan's office, said the pardons were granted to victims who were charged with some type of offense and eligible for posthumous clemency. Okay, so now I think it gets to the meat of it. Because at first I'm thinking to myself, why are they, doing this for people who were victims of a lynching? But it shows right here that they were charged with something. So this kind of changes everything for me, or puts it into perspective. If I jumped the gun, forgive me. Among them were George Peck, who was lynched in 1880 while he was being transported to trial. Look at this. Some of these people got lynched and didn't even make it to their trial. King Johnson, who was seized, beaten, and fatally shot in 1911 by 8 men after he was left unguarded in jail, and Jacob Henson, who was removed from jail by a mob near Ellicott City while planning his own appeal for a murder conviction in 1895. Maryland House Speaker Adrienne Jones, the first black person and first woman to hold her leadership position in the state, said it was noteworthy that 3 white men, Hogan, Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski Jr., and Attorney General Brian E. Frosh, stand here with us to say this was wrong, and we should collectively acknowledge it to move forward into the next chapter. In recent years, Maryland, a slaveholding border state that remained in the Union during the Civil War, has focused on confronting lynchings in the state, an indelible and deeply painful part of American history. The Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a government-backed panel, is in the midst of a 3-year study examining the acts in 19th and 20th century Maryland and impact it had on the state. The commission was assigned counsel from the state attorney general's office and issued an interim report on its findings last year to Hogan and the leaders of the General Assembly. Cooper was one of the youngest victims we were tasked with investigating. We don't know a lot about these individuals, said Charles L. Chavis Jr., the commission's vice chairman and an assistant professor of conflict resolution and history at George Mason University. We don't know what he liked to do as a child. We don't know what his pastimes were. The humanities for these individuals were stripped in the acts of violence. 2 months before Cooper was killed in 1885, an all-white jury deliberated for less than a minute. and declared him guilty of assaulting and raping a white woman, even though the victim did not testify she had been raped, according to Will Schwartz, president of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. That charge triggered the death penalty, but Cooper's attorneys fought to overturn the conviction, arguing that his 14th Amendment rights had been violated because black people were barred from serving on juries in Maryland. His attorneys unsuccessfully appealed the conviction in Maryland, and the mob broke into the old Baltimore County Jail and lynched Cooper before his case could go to the Supreme Court. No one was held accountable for his killing. On Saturday, leaders with the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project and the Equal Justice Initiative unveiled a blue marker erected steps away from the jail detailing Cooper's story. Lewis Diggs, who has written 13 books about black history in Baltimore, pulled the tarp off the memorial plaque. He said he hoped the other communities will make a similar effort because we need to know our history. The plaque notes that pieces of the rope to kill Cooper were given away as souvenirs, and that Cooper's mother, Henrietta, collected her son's remains and buried them in an unmarked grave. A child was lynched right here. Why would we ever want to forget that? Schwartz asks. Oh, that's easy. Palm color. That's the part of history they want to forget. They want to act like it didn't happen. They're glad that it did happen, but they want to make it seem like it didn't. Well, we're here today to make sure no one does. That's crazy. But like I said, this right here, I did not know about even happening. Like all of this stuff right here that I just read, I did not even know was happening. But like I said, I jumped the gun a little bit. I can always admit my mistakes because I, like many others, was like, why are they granting pardons to people, to victims? And then when I read that they had to have a trial and they were basically found guilty, some of them unfortunately never made it to trial. Like they already made up in their minds that they were guilty. Like you heard, one didn't make it to trial, one deliberated for a minute, and off of pure allegation and accusation. And that's kind of like how it is today when you think about it. It's just that it's drawn out in front of the world for the media to see. They didn't have a media circuit, so to speak, back then like they do today. So yeah, now I can see why Larry Hogan is doing it, but I have to agree on one other point that people were saying. It's too little too late. These people have been dead for well over 100+ years. I mean, I'm glad that you want to feel like you're giving them some kind of recognition, but at the same time, that just shows you how deeply rooted our history is in this establishment and how deeply buried it is, practically down to the root, almost to the core of the earth. And this is the part that they don't want to talk about, because this, like I said earlier in the video, this could be a claim, this could be a case right here for reparations. They don't want us having a case for reparations. They want us to have as little cases as possible. They're probably upset with the cases that we have right now. And they're probably mad at Larry Hogan because he found this or even mentioned it. This will be considered as off-code behavior by many of them. They'll probably look at this and be like, oh, that means nothing and everything like that. Then they'll come back and say, what about our history? That's PC for you. So in that aspect, Larry Hogan, you did something decent with this. But on the flip side, it's still too little too late. And it's not really necessarily his fault or everything like that, because this happened years ago, like way before he was even governor, way before probably when he was still a child. So, it is what it is. But one thing I did get out of this article was learning about this that happened, because I didn't know that this happened. This was everything I just read about these lynchings right here that happened in Maryland is new to me. I'm not saying I was oblivious that lynchings happened in the state of Maryland, but I'm just saying I did not know it was like this, as far as having the names, where they happened at, why they happened. But back then you could have got lynched for sneezing. Let them tell it. But I'm sure that there are several other states out there that has a list just like this that they probably have compiled, but they haven't come out and showed yet. That right there, if they could compile a list of the entire nation, I'm willing to bet that's more cases that can be added to the file as far as making a claim for reparations. But will it actually go through? I'm not going to say I'm hopeful, But if it does happen, I'm not gonna lose any sleep. I'm not gonna lose my what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think of it right now at the moment. I won't hold my breath. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.